I was on the bus the other day and it was delayed, of course. So I found myself with some extra time. And I thought, well, now would be a good time to check in on Instagram, which is rare for me because I tend to find myself on Instagram in these stolen moments. But doing so can be hazardous because before long, I was sitting there on the bus, staring at my phone in my hand, fighting back tears because I was reading this very tender and touching caption on an Instagram post. And so of course I put my phone away and or scrolled away so that I wasn't crying on the bus in public. Um, so I don't spend a lot of time on these social media platforms like Instagram, but one of the things that has always impressed me about some people on there is the power that they have to move me to tears with these very personal stories and told so simply. And on that bus, I was struck not only by the beauty of the words of this post, but the poignancy of seeing my own story in her story and how those pieces of my story connected to her story, and how my instinct is to start forming the words to share my own story in that way. But I haven't yet become the kind of person who can share so personally on a platform like Instagram. It just feels too vulnerable for me. And anytime I want to do that, I feel all kinds of fears coming up to envelop me. So it occurs to me that in order to do that, I would have to become the kind of person who's comfortable with sharing that openly, a personal story on that platform. And it made me think about, the secret that we never learn about when it comes to telling our stories or writing our memoirs, which is that it's not so much about the writing first. You can take every workshop on structure or read every craft book on how to write a memoir in 90 days or whatever, but none of that actually brings a memoir into the world, because the real question isn't so much how to write the book. Oftentimes it's who do you have to become in order to tell this story, to share this story. And that's a distinction that I have come to understand both through telling my own story and sharing it, by publishing it, and listening to people who really feel called to tell their own story but are hesitating. I realize that they're not so much stuck because they don't know what to write or how to write, but it's because they sense instinctively that telling the story will have consequences. And that can look like family reactions, being judged, um, relationships breaking up, sometimes even retaliation. And so they just stall, their book just stalls. And so what I've come to realize is whether you know it or not, you become the author first before your memoir can be written, before your story can be told. You become the person who can stand steady in your perspective and the person who can write from integrity and tell the truth of your story with clarity and with care. And once you make that distinction, you make that transition, you find that the fear loosens up enough for you to, and your story actually starts to move and it becomes possible to tell it. And that's what's led me to create this gathering called Before the Aftermath, which I'm hosting live Wednesday, March 11th at 6 p.m. Eastern. So this gathering, it's not about, motivating to write your memoir because you don't need more motivation. Um, you're here because you have a story to tell, and this is about preparing yourself for what comes after your story is told, after the truth is spoken. So inside this gathering, I'll be speaking very openly, sharing my own personal story, and what I've learned about how to write with integrity rather than fear, and how to stay emotionally steady in the face of any reactions to your story. So I invite you to join me live if you can, because being in the room is completely different from watching the recording. And you can reserve your spot in the link below.